You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me as always, Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You know, we're
I'm
sitting
sure.
here. Basically, the first thing I said to you when we jumped on the call this morning was, "Do you think we'd be talking about 3 wins today?" And I'll start the show the same way because, it has been an interesting week.
It has been. And maybe the best part of this week has been that, you know, we've done 2 episodes in a row where we've had to focus on, as we said, uncomfortable topics.
Yep.
This week was strictly hockey. You know, and I'm not saying that that means that you put everything that happened aside. I mean, it started that it's not that it started that way, because Monday was the press conference with the Hockey Canada thing, and really it didn't offer much in form of answers. So there wasn't exactly like there's no real reason to talk about it. All we really got was confirmation from the police department of charges. That's it.
Absolutely.
And so you kind of left yourself sitting there kind of scratching your head over it. And at the same time, it's like, okay, listen, now it's a due process. The only other piece of information that we got was there was like a hearing of some kind, or they made like their preliminary appearance in court, or their lawyers did. And the next date that came out was April 30th, which is almost 2 weeks after the regular season ends in the NHL. So it kind of almost puts a bow on the last 2 weeks of that topic and allowed us to kind of, from a Flyers perspective, go, listen, everything else about this is kind of just status quo for now. He's not around. His locker stall is gone. They've edited him out of every pregame video that there is and all stuff like that. So, like,
I assume he is in the process of being erased from Flyers history as best as possible.
Well, and at least tied to the current team while they move forward. Like, they're not out there branding that. And what that's supposed to do is allow you to focus on the team coming back from the break and the games ahead and the push and things like that. And I think
they did.
Well, almost not, though, because the first period was exactly what I worried about. It was exactly what I was worried about because I think what I had hinted at was, I'm not necessarily surprised about their first period in Florida. What I hinted at, though, is that either Florida is going to be the same way, and it's going to be this big feeling out process, and it's going to kind of look ugly in the first period for both sides, or they're just going to come out firing away.
No, so what happened is Sam Ersson asked for some early action in that game so he could get back into the swing of things. So they just kind of let the Panthers get a couple of early chances, some early shots, some early really dangerous opportunities, but it's okay. It was all a test. It's all for Sam.
Well, it's certainly a good old confidence booster for sure. I mean, like when you think about when you think about how the pre-break ended for Ersson too, like all the action facing all these top players, and I say that like the facing these top players thing,
right?
Not trying to ignore the fact that Florida's got a good roster, and you were facing a legitimate top goal scorer in the league this year. You were facing another, at least 2 other players that have immense skill. I'm thinking of Tkachuk and Barkov at that point, on top of what Reinhart brings. Carter Verhaeghe, who scored the power play goal in the first period. And like, that was kind of like that moment when they finally do score, because you're sitting there going like, as long as it's still scoreless, this is okay. I mean, you wish they would pick it up, but as long as it scores, and then they score and you're going, okay, now it's halfway through the first period, and it's like, now you're going to see how it's about how they respond. And
now it's time to be concerned.
And it was more of the same too. They hadn't scored first, I think, in any of the games that they had lost on the 5-game losing streak.
Right.
It's here comes Colorado, here comes Tampa, here comes Boston. Like, that was the way it was the entire time. And you really, like, look, we don't know. We're not even in my position. We're not privy to the words that are used in the room in between periods. Of course. And I wasn't there anyway. This was the one game this week that was on the road.
But I imagine John Tortorella.
But something was definitely said.
Yeah.
because that was a totally different team in the second and third period than it was in the first period.
They needed a little wake up. They needed the wake up call.
Sure. And I think it's a reminder, it's just a reminder of, again, like, now that you're into February, like, this is what John Tortorella said about January too, that it was like, okay, now we start finding out who you are. Like, this is where we find out what kind of team this is and everything like that. And yeah, boy, did they ever, because, and that's the thing, like when you think about Tortorella post game from this game, And they finished up the second period. They weren't even leading the game, but they finished up the second period. And his response is, basically, and I'm cleaning it up, obviously, but are you kidding? Are you kidding me? Like, do you see what happens when we play this way and play with that identity and then have everything clicking? Like, they're as good as anybody in the league. And
this team believes in John Tortorella big time.
Sure. And it says a lot when you play, you've already swept the season series against Vancouver and, okay, sure. Playing, Boston's number 2 in the league, and we saw what happened against Boston. And that was the perfect storm to an extent for Boston, that they weren't going to, it's funny though. They got a little bit of the Flyers' best. And then as soon as something happened negatively, it snowballed, and that hasn't happened a lot this year, obviously, but still. And then you're thinking about, the way that they've been able, even though they lost heavily to Nathan McKinnon the second time around, they've been competitive. Like, they were competitive in that game against Colorado after beating Colorado. We're going to get to the next team on this week's schedule that they won again against. It's like,
even other good teams that they've beaten, they've beaten Dallas this year. They've beaten
Vegas.
Right. They've beaten Vegas this year.
And that's what I'm saying. So now you're adding
good teams.
Right. You're adding.
You shut out Winnipeg in Winnipeg on the second half of a back-to-back when they were one of the hottest team in hockey.
Right. And you've added Florida to the list. And Florida, by the way, considering how I want to go back to, or not go back to, but let's fast forward on the schedule for 1 second from Tuesday when they returned. And this has nothing to do with the Flyers, but do you know what Florida did for the rest of the week?
Okay. No, I don't.
4-2 win against Washington, which, okay, Washington's kind of in that messy middle.
They're coming around a little bit. They're starting to put it together. Keep an eye on Washington over the next couple of weeks.
The problem with Washington to me is they're very hit or miss. Like,
yep,
I know where you're going because they played Boston really well on Saturday.
Well,
but I go to the
and Ovi's got 3 goals in 5 games.
Well, I that's probably because that's the key to the whole thing.
Yep.
If he's going, then he's going to have to shoulder this thing.
And when he warms up, he tends to warm up in big fat bunches.
But they're never going to make it to where they want to get to, considering where they are in the standings. If you have, hey, we played, Washington plays Florida 4-2 loss. Oh, then plays Boston 3-0 win. Like, they can't go that back and forth that much at this stage of the season and expect to get anywhere in the standings. They have to go on a run.
Sure.
And I'm looking at Florida, and it's okay. So you beat a team like Washington, who's kind of in the middle, like we said, 4-2, and then Saturday it's 4-0 against Colorado.
Yep, they're a good team.
But how'd your week start though? 2-1 loss to the Flyers. Like,
yes, sir.
This team just continues to pull out these games, and that was kind of like, to me, winning a game like that. And we had kind of talked about it because you did. You asked me I think you've asked me really the last 2 weeks, but especially last week, you asked me where the optimism went.
Right.
And it was like,
it's back.
Well, it is back to an extent, but it was also, I think I finished the week saying they needed, you don't want this to get to Seattle. You did not want to start this week with lose to Florida, lose to Winnipeg, and then, maybe you can beat Seattle. You kind of wanted a statement.
Kevin, they're 6 points clear of a playoff spot.
I know.
Well, and there's only one game in hand for the Islanders. So it's not even one of those.
Well, there's. I don't want to jump too far ahead.
The Devils, they suck.
I'm not going there yet. The Devils got Jack Hughes back this week. I just want to see what happens. But I will give you this, and this was the benefit, because the Flyers haven't exactly. I think on set, like, it kind of is hit or miss with their schedule this year. It's been weird because sometimes the Flyers usually either have a lot of 1 o'clock Saturdays or a lot of 7s, and it's really no in between. And it's been kind of a healthy mix. The benefit of them playing at 7 on Saturday of this week was that the Islanders were already done. The Islanders were done before I left to go back for the game. I went to morning skate, which, by the way, morning skate for Saturday was an optional, and boy, we did a lot take the option. If you know what I mean, or not take the option. I mean, because 5 guys got on the ice, and if you want to know, if you want an idea of who, the backup, 3 guys who didn't play in the game, and Noah Cates.
Okay, and you know what? Let's talk about Noah Cates a little bit because we brushed by the game-winning goal in Florida.
Yeah, no, that's a
But
fair point. I didn't mean to even segue into that like that. But yes,
what an individual effort that play was.
To stay with it, yeah.
The Travis Konechny play was really nice. The pass from Joel Farabee, the little backhand, forehand, beautiful little move. But the individual effort out of Noah Cates on that goal, my goodness, that was a special play.
As we progress through the week, because we're certainly going to get here when we get to the Winnipeg game too, and then obviously the Seattle game is going to be this way. But I think Noah Cates scoring that goal, because it started with, like you said, it starts with Travis Konechny, and you're kind of like looking around going like, okay, yeah, I mean the best player on the team is going to have to be the best player on the team for this thing to kind of get going, right?
Sure.
And then Noah Cates scores, and it's like second goal of the year, hasn't really contributed in that way much this year. That's what you need. You're going to need those guys. And that's going to become a heavy theme as we go through the rest of the week, because
and it
starts with that goal.
Yeah, and it's the kind of effort you get from guys who have completely bought in, who are completely committed.
I'm going to tell you what else matters in that situation too, because this is also a recurring theme from the week. For the most part, like I'm going to kind of try to rack my brain a little bit more on the game against Winnipeg to kind of remember each individual goal in that situation.
Yeah.
But I know for every other goal that I'm thinking of from Noah Cates through and within the game against Seattle, look at how each player who scores in that situation, because of the fact they're not Travis Konechny, essentially, look at how each player reacts to scoring a goal. Like Noah Cates was pretty much out of his mind for not only scoring for the first time in what feels like forever, but it's a big goal.
Oh, huge goal. And game-winning goal.
So, right. Well, eventually, you're not thinking that 3 minutes into the third period.
But it's the goal that puts you in the lead.
It's the goal that puts you in the lead. Yep. But for him, I'm telling you right now, that reaction had nothing or had very little to do with it taking the lead. That is, I did something to help this team in this particular way, not the defensive play, not winning a face-off or something. No, scored a goal.
I contributed
only his second. And I'm gonna, and I'm fired up about it. And in fairness too, like, what's really cool about a situation like that is that Travis Konechny's on the ice with him in that moment, because they did run 11-7 in that game.
Yes.
And so they're rotating the lines all over the place. And Konechny is almost equally as excited, for the other guy scoring. Not this is, he scored 24 of these at this point, no big, kind of no big deal, so to speak.
But getting the kid one, the guy who hasn't had one in a while, the guy who needs one.
Actually, I lied. It was 23 at that point, by the way, because we're going to get to the 24th.
Yes.
But you get the point. But this is a guy who scored his second. And for what it's worth, by the way, a guy who didn't lack in that department last year. Like, he had 13 goals last year. We were sitting here in the offseason talking about, hey, is 20 a possibility? Like, that would be a nice step up. If you got 13 as a rookie, 20 would be nice. And I know that the injury hurt him because he missed a lot of time. But now what you would have loved to see him get on the radar and do is, especially at the time of the injury, if he didn't have just one, like if he had 3 or 4 at the time of injury and comes back and you go, okay, can you get to 10 maybe?
Sure.
That would be nice, to kind of get close, to give you an idea that, like, listen, if you had played the full year, you would have made it maybe to 20 or at least 15.
And at this point, you're kind of looking at him and going, well, if you can pick up a couple of more and end up 6 or 7, that'd be awesome.
And I'm not even, you know what? No, because
that's setting the bar pretty high.
Bro, I was gonna say, at this point, you're not even putting a number on it.
No.
At this point, you're looking for, well, because you know what else it is too. At this point, who's contributing with regularity, who's not, and where it's gonna come from. And and when you get a goal from Cates, it's great. Like, of course, you take them every single time. It's the same way that, depending on the situation, when you were winning games in different seasons or whatever, like, what I equate that to an extent also, like the last time that this team was really kind of deep into a playoff run.
Okay.
You took every Tyler Pitlick goal you could get because he's not expected to, but when he does, this is great. Look at where they're getting scoring from. It's not.
Man, he put up a couple of big ones.
He
Tyler
had
Pitlick
some
was so
slick
much fun.
offensive ability, like it wasn't like he was completely inept in that department and was like, you're just the penalty killing defensive specialist kind of.
No, I like Tyler Pitlick a lot. He was a really nice player.
He's hung around too. Like I give him credit. Like 5 years later, sometimes guys like that don't stick,
right?
And for all I know too, like the way that everything went with all the COVID seasons and things like that, that could have easily that could have easily cycled him out of the league.
So many guys just dropped in and out of the league because those were such a weird couple.
There's a few guys, but there's a few guys who you look back on and they may not have even been Flyers at the time. Like they might have been former Flyers already that have hung around that you're like, good for that guy. Like I thought that the other, or like Tuesday, the starting goaltender for Florida coming out of the break is Anthony Stolarz. And you're like, you know what? It didn't work out here. That the injury history and all that type of stuff. It didn't work in Philadelphia. But good for him for still having an NHL job.
Tyler Pitlick, by the way, has 4 points in 34 games with the New York Rangers this season. Good for him.
And you know what? You said 34 games, considering they've played about 51.
Yeah, he's played most of them.
It's like, all right, you're mostly involved.
On a team that has a shot at winning a cup.
On a team that's got really good depth. Yeah. I mean, for sure. So
if they win the cup, he's getting his name on the ring. Here he's getting his name on the cup.
Yeah. If the Rangers
good for Tyler Pitlick, right. Man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good for Tyler Pitlick, man.
Sure. And that's
every
what I'm
team
saying.
needs guys like that.
It's those guys that you sit there and go, listen, if you've hung around and had a decent career, good for you.
Sure.
That you've actually been this wasn't even a team they played, but I actually, this is who, no. I went to this one after the Islanders because I watched the tail end of the Islanders game. Then I flipped over because the Red Wings and Canucks went to overtime. And you're watching as the Red Wings game goes on, you're going, look at who's running the show in goal for Detroit. It's Alex Lyon. Who again, who did the same thing with Florida last year.
Flyers backups of Christmas past.
It is, crazy. But Lyons turned himself into a reliable NHL goaltender.
I will die on the hill that Alex Lyon should have gotten Hart votes in 2023 for the run he had with the Florida Panthers down the stretch,
basically carrying them into the playoffs,
dragging them, kicking and screaming into the playoffs
until they
then ended up going right, and then sure they dumped him for the guy who's making $10 million. I get it, fair enough. But that run in the regular season, man, Alex Lyon, come on. Somebody give him a third place vote. I'm not saying he deserves to win it, but somebody toss him a third place vote.
I hear you. Well, anyway, so where we were going with this is I don't know how we ended up talking about 20 other teams and other goaltenders and whatnot. But so you brought up the playoff standings and how the way the point shift was. The benefit of the Flyers playing at 7 on Saturday was that the Islanders played early.
Okay.
And I mean, they weren't alone. I mean, you had a lot of games that were also actively going on while the Flyers played, but that was kind of the big one because the Islanders were the next team in line in the Metro. So you're looking at them the closest. And I didn't even really keep track of it because I was kind of back and forth throughout the course of the afternoon on Saturday. So I didn't see every ounce of this, but once I actually had a chance to check on everything.
Yeah.
I open it up and it's under I think it might have been 3 minutes left. You're getting into empty net territory. And the Islanders are losing 4-2.
Yep.
And you're like, oh,
okay, then this is looking
the window of opportunity is open tonight. Yes. The Islanders just invited you in. Here's an open invitation to gain 2 points if you find a way. And they ultimately did. And then let's
not gloss over the Winnipeg game.
No, I don't want to. I just was kind of getting into that point because Because Saturday was going to be the day where, as always, Saturday is the day whenever, because it was still a light schedule, even on Thursday. There were only 7 games in the league, which, and not any that, not really any that had major playoff implications. Right. I mean, no, actually, I shouldn't say that. There were, but you had the same thing happen. It was some of them win and some of them lose, and it's kind of like the balancing act. You take the ones like on Thursday, Washington lost to Florida, as we already mentioned, and the Devils lost to Calgary. Calgary, by the way, I guess, Calgary should be the Flyers' best friends right now. This week is gone. They're doing right from the Flyers standpoint. They're doing great work. Is right. And then on the other hand, Carolina beat Colorado pretty convincingly, and the Islanders,
Carolina's not losing to many teams these days,
right? And
they're just not.
No, but you know what? You give them the thing is that you give Carolina, or you give the team playing Carolina a shot when it's like Colorado.
Yeah.
But Colorado hasn't looked really good coming out of the break either. Like Colorado, all of a sudden, is totally a different team than they were when they came into Philly.
Right.
To an extent. I mean, and they'll get it back, and the Islanders, by the way, that night beat Tampa convincingly also because Tampa had played the night before and just. I mean, let's just wait. I could tell you what that game was going to look like.
Loss. Yeah.
Well, the second that they weren't rolling Vasilevsky out for it.
Absolutely. But
like
then
in a back-to-back, and they looked sloppy.
But then, like you said, Saturday, the NHL kind of actually they got a real chance to kind of roll out their best media day. First, Saturday off in a while where you could kind of get in there and get some games on ABC. And they let it off. Well, yeah, because they let it off with St. Louis Buffalo.
That maybe that one looked more attractive when they planned this out at the beginning of the year.
I get it. Expect Buffalo to be a little bit better than they were, and maybe even St. Louis too. But and then you followed up with Washington.
I don't know what are you trying to say, that Seattle being close to a playoff spot and the Flyers being in a playoff spot would have made for a better put this one on TV versus the stream only?
Well, no, I'm not actually. I'm just talking about the fact that you kick off your media schedule on Super Bowl Saturday, right? Like the Saturday of Super Bowl weekend, interest in sports kind of across the country is at an all-time high because there's been conversation about it for 2 weeks. And you have an opportunity to really put out a good quality game. And other games you had today included, you did put Capitals Bruins on TV, but you could have put Avalanche Panthers.
Well, the timing would have been
Colorado. Yeah, you just moved the game to make it earlier in the day. Any of these,
I don't see any reason why tell me how Detroit Vancouver is a bad matchup based on what happened. Maybe at the beginning of the year you weren't thinking much for Vancouver, or maybe Detroit for that matter. But that turned out to be a good game.
Even Devils Canes or Maple Leaf Sens, any of these games are better than
Maple Leaf Sens from an ABC standpoint. That was the Hockey Night in Canada game.
Okay,
I wonder if that's the reason for that. But I can't defend the Carolina New Jersey one.
Right. I mean,
there's no defense for that at all. I mean,
you knew that was going to be a great game.
But outside of the fact that you were like I said, that you were already lined up to stream only for the
now
Flyers and Kraken.
The game went 1-0 to overtime, so I don't know I actually don't know how good the game was, but
the Devils play like that typically, and then Carolina just followed suit.
Oh,
and for what it's worth, by the way, you had another spectacle with that game because that was the throwback night for Carolina. They were wearing the Whalers jerseys. Come on.
They wore the Cooperalls in warm-ups.
In for warm-ups, yeah, that was pretty sick. That was sick.
All right,
let's back to Flyers.
Talk about that Thursday game. So
Flyers.
You come out and beat Florida on Tuesday night, coming out of the All-Star break. Noah Cates scores your game-winning goal, and then
very much the term I would use is very much a playoff style win.
Fair,
I mean, that's exactly, your goalie was great. You got a clutch goal from somebody you don't necessarily expect it from, and you had to hold on at the end to an extent. But that's how the playoffs are going to look.
Absolutely. And then they roll that playoff style mentality into the first period against the Winnipeg Jets and quite frankly bowl them over in the first period.
I want to make an interesting So I want to make an interesting footnote right off the bat because obviously the backup was playing for Winnipeg.
Yeah, and Laurent Brossoit has been great.
Yeah, he has been. So I'm not taking to be honest, you're looking at this going, the games he starts, they still normally only give up 2 goals a game. So good luck. You're going to have to figure some stuff out. Now, I found this immensely interesting because now I don't know. And I don't know if there was ever an answer that was actually given for this. Connor Hellebuck was never on the bench for the game.
Interesting.
The entire game. And I didn't realize it until when I've been in the press box, I've put AirPods in and kind of have have the broadcast streaming over my laptop so that I can kind of hear.
Yeah, they did mention it.
And they brought up they brought it up maybe halfway through the first period or something like that. And I'm like,
they never touched it again.
Oh, well, no, that was it didn't matter. They didn't have to. It called to my attention anyway. Because I wouldn't have really been looking at the Winnipeg Jets bench otherwise.
Especially the backup goalie area.
And I look over and I'm like, oh yeah, he's not there. Okay, that's interesting. And then of course,
it was kind of funny seeing a player sitting on that stool.
It was.
It's pretty amusing.
And then it's 3-0 after the first period, and you're going, maybe. like maybe they do something. And then you look over and you realize at the start of the second period, he's still not there.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, well, Brossoit's got this thing no matter what. And
I wonder if Brossoit had that thing no matter what.
He might have
the game,
but it would have just been interesting because they would have looked that direction.
Right. And Connor Hellebuyck just decided not to get dressed because he didn't feel like it because he wasn't playing.
I don't know. And for what it's worth, Hellebuyck had started the first meeting between these two teams, so you kind of tend to lean that direction anyway. Okay. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where it's like you usually see patterns like, oh, this guy's going to start again. Like everybody knew Ersson was getting that game.
Right.
Because Ersson shut him out the first time around. So it's like, yeah, of course you're getting Winnipeg.
Of course you're running that back.
Right.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, by the way, so let's go to...
He almost did it again.
Well, let's stay with the first period for a second because they score 3 goals. They started off pretty quick. They get a goal off the rush. Tyson Forster from Ryan Poehling. More on him in a minute. Oh,
yeah.
But Forster obviously it was... Because Forster had scored 2 goals against Boston, and it was they were basically garbage time. Like, let's be real. Like, once you're scoring after 5-0, like, no offense, but they don't count for as much in that sense. You're not exactly. And Forster, to his credit, wasn't like fired up. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, he was way more fired up about opening the scoring in a game than hey, I scored 2 goals when it was 5-0. Yeah. But but that was the only goal for a little while, and then they follow it up really. Oh, and by the way, this is a fun factoid of the night because your all-star, 6 minutes into the game, just decides, you know what? Without hesitation, the gloves are coming off. I'm fighting a guy because I didn't like what happened. What happened when he made contact with me. All right, fine. And the only trade-off there is it means he's not playing for a minimum of 5 minutes. Because they stay in the box until the next stoppage after the fight time is over. So, like, you're sitting there going, all right, that's not ideal. You don't want to take your best player off the ice for that length of time against Winnipeg.
Your best player, your all-star, right. Right.
So what happens when he comes back? He scores a goal. Well, he scores a goal that deflects off of the player he fought that probably is going wide into the net.
It's the most Travis Konechny goal of all time.
It kind of is, yeah.
It's the most Travis Konechny goal of all time because it took a little bit of skill, but it was also him being a dick.
I appreciate where you're going with it, yeah.
Respectfully.
And then what happens under 2 minutes to go in the period? He gets the assist too. He completed the Gordie Howe hat trick in 4 minutes and 8 seconds of ice time.
Insane.
It might be among the fastest, especially when you fight first.
Right.
If you there's an extent where if you need the fight, you could just get the fight out of the way. Like that's the only thing that's left. Like I'm talking about, like you go out, what if he scored the goal in the time frame that Forster did, 3:37 into the game, and then what if you eventually get an assist at the 14-minute mark and you have the 2 points that you need, and you go, all I need is a fight. So the very next shift, I'm just picking one.
Somebody give it to me. Yeah.
Right. I'm just picking a fight with the first guy I see. I don't even care. I want to fight.
Pick the smallest guy on the ice and just go hit him.
And let's be real. It's not
Travis
for Konechny, for as chippy of a player and as much of a rat and a grinder as Konechny is, he's not out there exactly picking fights every day.
No.
So it was a little bit unusual to see because you're like
walk over to somebody and just confetti glove was
I know.
Yeah. Out of character for him, but not in a bad way.
Well, and the interesting part was, so they're only leading the game 1-0 at that point, and it's 6 minutes in, and he starts with kind of like the slashes first, where it's like I'm just trying to get your attention or whatever. And in my head, I'm kind of going, dude, better be careful because you don't want to give them a power play. Like, I understand you didn't like. I understand when you didn't like what the guy did, but you don't need to take a penalty there because you didn't like it, and that's what it was starting to head towards. And just the thought barely had time to enter my mind before both players had gloves off and he really chucked his. And you're like, all right, never mind. We're just going. All right.
Okay.
More power to you, I suppose. The funny part is that, okay, so beyond the first period where they play great, I mean, I have, they outshot Winnipeg 13-4 in the first period.
Okay.
So straight up dominance. Like, once you got this, especially once you got the second one, you finished the period strong and everything's great. The one thing I will say about the end of the first period, and this, I think it feels like it's a precursor for what's to come. They're up 3-0. They've just played a great period all in all. But with 10 seconds left, Sam Ersson, who had seen 3 shots the entire period, has to basically make a toe save.
Yeah.
And he does. And you're like, wow, the guy has barely seen any action all period, and he's making a save like that. That's pretty.
And he's that sharp in that moment. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, that's a big save because obviously you want to take 3-0 to the intermission, not 3-1. You don't want to give him any signs of life in that final 10. And before you can even blink coming out of the gate, again, it's barely 2.5 minutes into the period, the second period. And Travis Konechny, who's having a night at this point already, who's had more action already in the first period than most people have in one night,
right,
takes another penalty.
Yep.
And again, there's an opportunity. The momentum could shift right there. It's early in the second period. Winnipeg is, by the way, is not playing with the roster that they had the last time you played them, which was minus Mark Scheifele and minus Kyle Connor. They are playing with everybody.
The full complement, plus Sean Monahan making his
plus adding
debut.
Sean Monahan. That's fair too. And what happened? And what happens? Right off the faceoff, Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey run into each other. The puck sits at the blue line, and here comes Ryan Poehling. Off to the races.
Hilarious.
And Poehling, by the way, very calculated, enters the zone and uses Morrissey as a screen, puts it between his legs, scores shorthanded, which one of the things we were all kind of discussing after the game was over, by the way, and this I think is kind of true. I'd have to go back to actually look up exactly when it was, like to look up each one of the shorthanded goals that they have. But we had even said, been a little bit since the penalty kill contributed in that specific way.
Okay.
You know, like the penalty kill had still been good, but when was the last time that they had a shorthanded goal with like some meaning behind it? Because obviously, like they didn't score shorthanded against Boston. You know, they just lost that game. They got shut out by Detroit. Tampa wasn't one of those games. You know, Tampa, if nothing else, Tampa, you had a power play goal.
Yeah.
That kind of got you back into it. Okay. How about I'm looking at the Ottawa game. Nope. Ottawa, they scored 3 times. They had 2 power play goals in that one. That was kind of the crazy power play situation. Right? You know, so like you're digging and then, you know, okay, I just went through. I'm still going through.
Right.
Like I may have to go back to, and even then it didn't happen. So I went back as far, and I'm just leaving it at this. I went back as far as the Dallas game that capped off the 5-game winning streak. They had not scored shorthanded in that particular time frame. I'm wondering if maybe they had one against. Nope, they didn't have one in St. Louis either. So I'm thinking it goes back to like.
No, I could have told you they didn't have one in St. Louis.
I know. I was just trying to go through like from my own recollection here.
They almost did.
Like I'm pretty sure I have to go back to. You know what? I think I know when it is now.
Okay.
If I'm just looking off the cuff here, because I don't believe, like again, Winnipeg they didn't. Minnesota, I don't believe they did because Minnesota was the one they had to rally back from the 3-1 deficit in the third period, so they won it on a power play.
Right.
I think it was Travis Konechny's game winner against Calgary on January 6th.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying. They hadn't come through with a shorthanded goal. Like the penalty kill is still playing well, but they haven't done that in basically a month.
And that goal still brought them into a tie for the league lead in shorthanded goals.
I know. And very briefly, by the way, we'll get to that later. But and at that point, okay, it's 4-0. So you're gonna naturally kind of relax a little more until because let's be real about what that also like. Winnipeg, by the way, outshot the Flyers 15-3 in the second period. So one of the 3 was the shorthanded goal.
Yeah, score effects took over for the rest of that game.
But the thing was that from my vantage point, anyway, we came away with. From that second period. Yeah, they had 15 shots, but how many of them were really quality? Like there wasn't a lot that was like
the Flyers were doing a phenomenal job of controlling play still.
Well, they give when you give up a shorthanded goal when you're already down 3-0, no less, you saw the drop. Like, for the next few minutes, we don't have a lot of energy because
especially on the road.
Now this feels like, oh great, like the one opportunity we do have to get back in this game, it's 3-0, score a power play goal. Then you have, at that point, they score a power play goal. They have what would it be at that point?
Plenty of time. 30
You would
minutes.
have something, well, I would say 35 minutes at that point because it would be in the first 5 minutes. So you would have 35 minutes to figure out a way to get 2 more. and you have something on that, like, because that's what also creeps in too, is as the period's going on and they've taken 19 shots and Sam Ersson has stopped all 19.
What do we have to do to beat this guy?
No, and by the way, you didn't score on him in Winnipeg either. We can't score on this guy.
This guy's unbeatable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like, what are we supposed to do? We can't score on this guy.
This guy's got our number.
Right. So, but the third period, and they didn't get outshot nearly as bad. Like it was 10-5. But they really sat back. The chances weren't like there or whatever. And I guess they had 2 in the second period to a lesser extent. It started there. And okay, they gave up a goal. Kyle Connor scored with like 5:12 left or whatever. So it's like, all right, you know what? Not really as big of a deal. It just took the one last element of drama out of the game that Sam Ersson wasn't going to complete the season's series shutout on them.
Oh, it would have been so nice.
You let's suppose you were starting to think once it's under 10 minutes to go in the third period, you're definitely thinking, and by that point too, the game is pretty well in hand. I mean, the one thing I will say is right after that goal was scored by Winnipeg, they came back with another really good shift, and you're like, if they're not careful, it's gonna if you're not careful, it's gonna be a 2-goal game again. And guess what? They're pulling the goalie.
Right. Oh, yeah.
When they do, it's like giving them a power play. So be ready because
they're coming.
Well, especially considering the fact that the Flyers have had games, maybe not that late in the game, but they've had games where it's like you've been down and you've found your way back into games. Don't think it can't happen to you. Like what you can do to another team can happen to you if you're not careful here. So
Detroit, Columbus, you've had it happen.
Right. But Winnipeg doesn't score. So the final score is 4-1. And you would think that would be a very satisfactory result, like that you take some satisfaction in that result. And the room was kind of, we can't play like we did the last 2 periods or, like, so good we got the win, but we're better than that. And you like seeing that. You like seeing players like kind of own or whatever, but you kind of also in the back of your mind knew what was coming, because why do the players feel that it wasn't good enough? Because somebody else didn't feel it was good enough. Right. So after a 4, I can't help laughing over it. It's so funny. It's just funny. After a 4-1 win, we got 65 seconds of John Tortorella.
Hey.
Who started the press conference off with no words. What did you see out of the final 2 periods? Nothing.
Holds up the old donut.
That is John Tortorella in a nutshell.
Yep. How on earth do you quote that?
Oh, you don't. You just describe it for people. And even then, the thing that you have to like about what that situation does is, like, yes, listen, as I'm walking out of the press conference room that night, you're going, well, that was like, yeah, guess what? You know what Torts just gave you? Nothing. Like same thing. Like as much as the hand gesture says it all, and for what it's worth, it wasn't the only hand gesture this week either. We're gonna get to that wrong. Too. But as much as the hand gesture says a lot, you're sitting there also going like, well, that's great. Okay, they won 4-1. What do we get? The coach was still pissed off somehow. But there's an element where it was, what does that tell you? If the last 2 periods, if the last 2 periods of a game, it has nothing to do with not being satisfied. They won the game. Yes, you win the game 4-1. If it's not done up to the standard that you've set by now, you're still getting that reaction. I don't care that it was a 4-1 win. I don't care that you were up 4-0, 22, 23 minutes into the game. Don't care. You either finish the way you started.
Yep. You finish like garbage.
Or you're going to hear about it. Because that's not the identity. That's not, especially when, okay, first period back after the break in Florida was not very good. You were on your heels. You were lucky to get out of that thing down 1-0. What'd you do over the final 2 periods that allowed you to win the game? You played to your identity. You played like you've played all year. And another team who, by the way, and this is something I don't even know if we mentioned this when we talked about the Florida game, a team that you have not played yet, who hasn't seen what you are, just got a full healthy dose of it over the last 2 periods. This is how they play.
The Philadelphia Flyers are cutting a little swath through the league. I'm telling you, man. You don't want to run into them in the playoffs. Does anybody want to play against this team for 4 to 7 games?
And every team, for what it's worth, will sit there and say, I mean, like, obviously, and this is the thing too. Winnipeg comes away from that Thursday game and goes, we could have done more. The opportunity was there because of how everybody felt the last 2 periods went. Like, that's why Tortorella's acting the way he's like. His response basically is, "You're lucky it wasn't closer." Like, I don't care if it was a 4-1 win and the goalie plays well and this, that, and the other. Like, your goalie was your best player.
Yes.
When it came down to it, you started this thing off 20 minutes in. They had given up 4 shots. You gave up 25 over the last 40 minutes and only took 8.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's not going to endear yourself to the coach after a performance like that. But usually when they play to their identity, the responses you see from the opposition are a lot about, like, this is how they play. They're physical. They're, they skate well. They have, they're fast. They're in transition all the time. They're aggressive. Like, every team's come back saying the same thing. Every single one of them. That this is how they play. And man, like, even the teams that ultimately over the losing streak beat them pretty handily. Before the Boston game, Jim Montgomery's out there telling you about how, boy, they're really good in transition. We can't have lapses. They're going to get us if we are not on top of it. Like, we've got to be in control of that. And so every team in the league is on notice to, it's going to be physical. It's going to be fast. They want to catch you in transition. They want to be aggressive on you. So they're going to use that to their advantage. If they play like that, they're beating anybody, literally anybody. That's why they've won against top 5 teams in the league multiple times over the course of this stretch.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Top 10 for that matter too, because, like, I'll throw Winnipeg back into it with
Winnipeg slipped. Yeah.
Well, slipped a little, but like, yeah. But again, opportunity. That's why the first period was so critical. Look, they come in with a losing streak. The last time you saw them, it was
they were on a winning streak.
Well, a massive one and point streak, and in their building, and you're like, just battle. If you're gonna win it, battle. And that was the one that we also had kept saying was a scheduled loss because you just grinded out Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Had to come back from down 2 goals in the third period. Had to win in overtime. Played extra. Yeah. All right, good luck with Winnipeg. If you don't win it, we understand.
Right, you're kind of a built-in loss. You're crossing the border, traveling to Winnipeg overnight, one night. Yeah, it's awful.
Right. So now take that and the reaction to, they won 4-1, but nobody seems satisfied by it in the slightest, which is, I mean, look, that's a good thing, I guess, if you don't like the standard at which you're playing to.
They go to expect more.
And they go into a game against Seattle, and this is going to be one of the things that I love about this game from the very top, because I don't make it over to morning skate very often, but I went to morning
Dave Hackstall again.
What is the thing I don't have?
That's your favorite thing about this, right? Seattle comes to
town. No, it's not. I don't even bump into Dave.
Okay.
So I don't get over to morning skates very often, but I did for this one. So that means that I'm sitting in on Tortorella's press conference in the morning. Yeah. And for a change, by the way, because Tortorella has kind of pulled back on the "you're not getting any lineups out of me" kind of thing anymore, which, by the way, is just on schedule for January, February, and they're in a playoff race.
I cannot wait to see him when they get to the playoffs. He's going to be a delight to the media. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Anyway. I didn't even think about that part until you just brought it up. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
I started my Sunday
nightmare fuel for the next 2 months.
Yeah, I started my Sunday off in a good mood. No, anyway,
nothing.
Right. So we actually got more lineup information out of him for this. Well, right. Thanks, Willy Wonka.
Good day, sir.
Yeah. So we actually drew more lineup information out of him for this game than usual at this time of year. But the lead-in is, who's your goalie? And this time it was going to be Cal Petersen, which we had, like, I had a feeling, and we had actually talked about this last week, I think, to be honest, that we were like, there's going to be one. And I guessed between the two and guessed wrong. I picked Monday. But whatever. Okay, Saturday.
Yeah.
Either way, had a funny feeling he was getting one of them because A, they got to give him work, and B, Absolutely. You're not running Harrison into the ground. You can't.
I hope not.
Right. Like you need to know when to pick and choose your spots. So they pick him. And so I put it out there, right, on social. And here come all the people. Loss. Cal Petersen's in goal. Loss.
He's garbage.
So I kind of love that, like, the game starts and he's looking all right. Not seeing not a lot of shots, but he's looking all right.
Yep.
And they get the lead. And the second that he gives up a goal, they get the lead right back.
Yep.
And then they hold the lead. And the second that they tie the game on a fluky goal, no less, that's not even his fault. They score again. They get the lead back. And then they finish the job. And oh, by the way, look at what Cal Petersen did in this game. It's not a lot of shot volume. I get it. So it's a team effort to hold Seattle to 19 shots on goal for the game. Something that, by the way, the Flyers had not done like Sam Ersson in the 2 games he played, for all of the stuff over the losing streak, he got that save percentage back up.
Yes.
A tick with these 2 games, that's all well and good. This became, hey, you know what happens when the Flyers have a lead in the third period and they just clamp down on teams and all of a sudden there's not a lot given up? And then you look up at the end of the night and you go, oh, yeah, the opposing team barely broke 20 shots.
Yeah, right. 2 shots in the third period.
Normally on a typical night, 30, right?
Yep.
Like if you're giving up 30, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. No.
Yeah.
How about 19?
Right.
And right back on par with like when you were winning a bunch of games and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, the other team barely got anything.
Right. And you got 1 shot in the third period, 36 seconds in when Jared McCann scored and had 1 other shot 2 other shots in the period.
They finished
1 other
with 2
shot
in the period. Right. It was 2 for the period.
Hello? And you took the lead back 5 minutes later. So for the last 14 minutes of that period, Seattle's down and only managed 1 shot. If they didn't manage it before that, I don't know exactly when that shot came.
I highly doubt it. I don't recall.
I assume so.
I highly doubt it.
1 shot? That's a Dave Hackstall team, baby. Let's go.
Well, you knew you were getting that. I mean, you knew you were getting. There's an element where Tortorella's brand is that too. I mean, it's got some, because it's defensively rooted, it's going to be boring at times. But I never mind boring. Like, and this would be me taking the coach approach. Boring is never a bad thing when it results in wins.
Oh man, see, I'm just dreaming now. I've brought up fantasy hockey playoff matchups and John Tortorella and Rod Brind'Amour.
Oh,
come on, man.
Are you saying that because that's what it is right now too?
Well, right. And I'm thinking about it. You're talking about defensive styles, and I don't necessarily know if that works out in the Flyers' favor because Carolina.
Well, I want to pull back on that though, because like, yes, it's rooted defensively because that's Tortorella for you, like obviously, but the aggression isn't boring.
Oh, both
the aggression means you're a team that. No, I'm saying that the aggression is you're on the rush a lot.
Absolutely.
There's no team in the league. There's no team in the league this year better at creating rush opportunities than the Flyers, and then they score on a bunch of them. Like that's what I'm saying. It
sounds like Optimistic Kevin is back.
Well, just because what was this though? That's who they've been, and that's why I said last week, as much as there was some pessimism involved, they've earned the opportunity to come back from the break and stick it to everybody.
Have they.
Well, yeah, you know why? Or not know why, but yeah, boy, have they is right. You know how I know?
Okay.
Scott Lawton scored a power play goal to open the scoring on Saturday. What does that reaction tell you, though? That reaction is that this is, we know where we're at now in the season. I'm fired up to do something like that.
It's time to go. Oh yeah.
And this is the other part. This is the other part.
They know this game's on national TV. They know this is an ESPN game.
Well, national TV to an extent, but yes, I get your
ESPN point. Plus, Hulu. It's a nationally featured game. How about that?
Okay, nationally featured. I'm saying inevitably there's always people who hit you with what channel is it on?
It's on Hulu. It's 2024. If you don't have ESPN Plus, you should.
Well, just wait until
anyway, moving on.
Well, I know. Just wait until that announced, or supposedly announced, gigantic
cable package. Yeah,
is that what it is? That's what it essentially is. Yes, but you know what I mean.
Cable.
Just wait until that becomes like the direction that they force everybody to go.
I know, just back to
Pretty
cable, but more expensive. I know.
Probably. I don't know.
Yep.
Conversations for another day. So Seattle ties the game in the relatively late in the first period too, by the way. And your response, and by the way, the reason why the Flyers go on a penalty kill after this is because they challenge.
Right.
It was close. It might have been offside. I didn't see from my look at the replay. I know what they saw to challenge it. I didn't see enough to feel like it was getting overturned.
Right. Well, and they've been good enough this year that I'm not willing to bring up a problem with it. It's not a huge deal, especially when your penalty kill is as good as it is.
Well, that's an interesting
frankly.
point, because that was something that Charlie O'Connor tweeted afterwards, which was, maybe part of the reason is that if it's close and you think you have a shot to win the challenge, just go for it, because your penalty kill's been so good, you might score anyway.
Yep. And if the NHL ever adopts the PWHL, the power kill rule, where scoring a shorthanded goal ends the penalty, challenge everything. Challenge every
sure,
goal.
Sure, why not?
Guy in on the red line from on a breakaway all by himself. Offsides, challenge. Offsides.
Can I add in how much I love this shorthanded goal for what it was? Because all Garnet Hathaway does is chip a puck out of the defensive zone, basically from the face-off dot,
and Ryan
throws it the other way. The thing takes a nice friendly bounce off the boards and basically lands right on Ryan Poehling's stick. And then I had to go back and watch it a couple times to see this, because it's not something that you necessarily see from as far away as I'm looking at it from upstairs, because you're just watching kind of puck movement and things like that, and seeing what else is coming, because you were looking for his help. You were looking for, like, is the pass there kind of thing.
Right.
He's looking at Sean Walker coming in on the rush the entire time, and then all of a sudden just goes, nope, turns his head and shoots, all in one motion practically. So
it was a stellar play out of Ryan Poehling.
So Joey Decord, who's been great, by the way, this year, he's basically saved Seattle's season, giving him a shot to even make the playoffs.
Yep.
Isn't ready for it, and it goes right through the 5-hole. And there you go again. Poehling another shorthanded goal, 2 straight games with a shorthanded goal. Now they're up to 12 on the year. By the way, I think on the this was again, it was the ESPN Plus game. So I think on the broadcast they said that's already one more than they had in the entirety of last season.
I entirely believe that. Yeah.
And we're 53 games into the season, and they have 12 shorthanded goals. By the way, I wonder if that also, I don't know how often they're going to score for shorthanded for the rest of the year. Don't get me wrong.
Of course.
But for a stretch, that there was a chance that they were on pace to break the record for shorthanded goals in a season. The record is 22 in 86-87, and they're up to 12. Now, I know 10 at this stage of the season, 10 more is a lot.
Sure.
But for a little while, they had something like 7 in the first 21 games or something.
Yeah, they were insane for a couple of weeks there.
Right.
That was bananas. But I believe Travis Konechny still leads the league.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. No, okay, that's not. I'm sorry. I was going to say, Is that the NHL record? Because it showed up with an NHL record thing. No, the NHL record is the 83-84 Edmonton Oilers, who had, this is insanity, 36 in 80 games. Like, ridiculous.
Yeah. They were playing against plumbers. Like, let's be real. And they
by
had
the way,
Gretzky.
By the way, for what it's worth, because all of the top shorthanded goal seasons are all in the same era, basically, all in the 80s, basically.
I bet.
No. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking down this list. Here's a total oddball for you.
Okay.
The 2005-2006 Ottawa Senators had 25 in 82 games.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. I'm not even kidding you when I tell you there's not another season on this list that's later than 95-96. That's even wild. Relatively close to the top.
In the first post-lockout year?
Yes. Well, then all of a sudden I see 05.
Think about that year.
I know.
How many damn penalties were called that year?
Sure.
How many times were they shorthanded? No, I'm not asking you to actually look it up, but I have to imagine they were shorthanded more than any team in history.
I hear you. All right. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I want to finish off with the game.
That makes more sense. They were criminals.
So the third period when they give up the tying goal, by the way, which I said fluky because it hits off of Sean Couturier's stick and it was basically a self-deflection.
Yes. Funky.
So 5 minutes later, he gets one that really counts and scores the eventual game winner. Again, really good celebration.
Yep.
Fired up. Apparently after the tying goal, Torts was in his ear a little bit, as you would expect.
Yep.
And so we brought up about the reaction, the body language on ice, and Torts just in the press conference just goes, "Oh yeah, that was FU to me," and doesn't hesitate to throw the middle finger up in the process.
Yep.
And by the way, while I'm speaking as we record this, I will say it that way because I don't know if it'll last this way. It's on YouTube. Go look it up.
On the Flyers YouTube page.
Go look it up. It's there. We were like honest to God, I went to we were going back upstairs, and my response to that is, all right, because sometimes he says something and they're able to cut out what he says or whatever.
Right. They edit.
So I'm like, good luck editing that one.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
He straight up on camera goes,
yep.
Straight up, I'll do this in the best way I can on ours. Straight up goes, bang.
Right. Throw it out there. We love John Tortorella. I know we talked about him.
Is what you get.
Yeah, and I know we talked about him potentially being a little bit ornery come playoff time, but when he does speak,
and in general,
it's going to be good.
But this is the thing about it. Like, why was the Winnipeg response the way that it was? Because he's going to pick his spots to tell everybody, I don't care what the score said. I hated it.
I didn't like the effort. I'm telling you.
And they hated it. And you know what? I'm not saying a word to them. They know it wasn't good enough.
Absolutely.
Let's see what happens next game. What did they do the next game? They went out and they had a really good first period. They played really well at the start of the game, and then they finished it much closer to. You went from playing 2 periods and surviving the first and finding a way to win, playing a great first and not playing well for the final 40 and finding a way to win, and then playing much more of a 60-minute game as much closer to one to finish it all out. And you know what that means? That means that you've come back from the break, you've won 3 straight, the standings look the way they do, and you're on to next week.
You start to roll forward, yeah, and we look ahead to we got 2 normal games to preview, and then one that we'll put a little spot,
a bigger one, right? So let's start with the normal ones, and I always Arizona is very much the same spot that Seattle is in this. Like they need points.
Yeah, I get what you were saying.
Arizona's getting more desperate.
Yeah, and I get what you were saying about not knowing which goalie was starting because you didn't know if they were going to give Cal Petersen Seattle or Arizona. I wasn't sure either, and I kind of also thought it was Arizona, but I guess it makes sense to give Petersen the Saturday night so that Ersson can have a couple of days off, play against Arizona, have a couple more days off. Maybe you probably don't play Petersen in Toronto, but you think about it.
Oh no.
You don't think so? Okay.
Absolutely not, especially while they're going right now. Like I think this was very well. First of all, by the way, and again, I only saw the video afterwards. I wasn't at the practice on Friday. But if you wanted like a hint, I kind of thought there was a hint given in terms of Tortorella said something along the lines of Cal's gonna play. I know when it is. And at the very least, like you knew, okay, probably one of the next 2.
Right.
I get that, but which one is it? And listen, maybe he doesn't know the answer, or the answer's different. If they didn't win the first 2 games out of the break, like we had talked about, like maybe hey, listen, you're gonna play Seattle, you kind of need a win to kind of really get this thing back on the rails. Then it's Ersson, and you'll save Petersen for Arizona. But if not, I think what it set yourself up to do is you actually gave Ersson a break in the middle of a bit of a busy stretch because they're playing like the on again, off again kind of schedule right now to start this thing. And what you're setting yourself up to do,
2 points out of that is huge.
Sure. And then you're setting yourself up for, okay, so now Ersson hasn't played since Thursday. So he comes in, plays on Monday, 2 days off, plays Toronto. And then naturally you're going to give him Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's getting Saturday. And then he gets 3 days off. So
he can play Chicago, and then you'll split the back-to-back. Somebody will get somebody. So
I'd be willing to bet anything that it's Ersson Saturday, Petersen Sunday.
Probably, but we'll get there when we get there.
Sure,
we'll have another show between now and then to talk about that.
I know. Well, and for what it's worth too, and I'm checking this just to see because I'm not 1,000% sure, but I wanted to see. Okay, no, so never mind. Ersson didn't start either of the games. So I wasn't sure if Ersson had started against one of the two teams they're playing coming up. I knew he didn't start against Seattle. Because that was the whole he had played the night before against Vancouver and then left with dehydration.
Okay.
So I knew he didn't play against Seattle, but did he play against Arizona? And that's why, just so, again, familiarity. It probably doesn't matter, to be honest. Like, we're at that stage of the season, but nonetheless. So you've got an Arizona team that I feel like you've got, again, similar opportunity like with Seattle. You have an opportunity to take advantage of. Toronto will be a test. We know this.
A huge test and probably a really fun game.
Sure. And you know that they're not going to be allowed to kind of think ahead to what's coming beyond a Toronto game.
They have to keep their heads in that game.
Well, I also think there's also an element where, and I love the fact that the schedule plays out that there's 3 games after Saturday or 3 days off after Saturday, because what that says to me is that first of all, you're only going to play 2 games over the course of the week. You have 4 days where you don't, which is great. Like, you should be well rested coming into that game to begin with. And you can basically spend yourself in that game and have some time off after the fact before Chicago.
Totally.
To be like, this is a show. Like, it's not just your average game. It's a big show.
Let it all
throw everything into this thing. Go out there, because like there were a couple of questions asked, I guess, at the Friday practice about this. I guess we really don't have to talk much about Arizona and Toronto. I guess we really should just jump into the about the outdoor element and all that stuff like that. And Tortorella is basically like, don't care, don't even want to talk about that. We just want to win a game.
Sure, he's just looking at it as an opportunity to get 2 points.
No, but I love it.
Sure.
Because
a coach who's been around as long as John Tortorella has, that's all he's going to say.
Well, because also at the end of the day, too, this is going to be, I believe this is the 6th outdoor game the Flyers have played in. They have something like that. They've lost.
To be fair, though, not too many players on the current roster.
Oh, no,
There's been a lot of turnover even since the 2019 Stadium Series.
Well, even down to, you ready for this one? Cam Atkinson has only played in 1 outdoor game in his life.
Yep.
It was in college.
Wow.
So he's never played in one of these NHL games like this.
You're telling me the Columbus Blue Jackets haven't gotten picked for outdoor games?
No, they have not.
Kevin.
But nonetheless, but nonetheless, like, if a guy like that's on your roster and hasn't, like you've got guys who are sitting there saying Mark Stahl's the one who's telling them how great it is to play in an outdoor game, because he has. Like, everybody else, like Cam York, don't know what it's going to be like, but we'll find out. It's going to be interesting, right? Like, guys like that. Like,
Joel Farabee hasn't played in an outdoor game, has he?
Not one with fans.
Because the Lake Tahoe game.
Right. So a couple of them will have that.
God, that game was atrocious. Oh my God. That game was such a...
But like, you've got to go back to, I believe this is relative, like, to be accurate with it. Scott Lawton played in that Stadium Series game in Philly. Travis Konechny did.
Sean Couturier.
Couturier, obviously. Yeah. But there's not a lot. I mean,
I'm still so mad about that Salt Lake game. That Lake Tahoe game.
That's the one that
the whole team had COVID.
That's the one that people forget.
Yeah.
Because also you didn't go to it. It's an event.
Yeah.
So that's, and it's interesting. Like, now all of a sudden, like, I don't know. I think that there might not have been as much buzz for this if the week started the way that the pre-break ended, because like now all of a sudden you're sitting there coming, like, we're here.
Oh yeah.
Within a week, this is happening.
This is our last show before the Stadium Series. We'll be back next week.
I'll be talking to you from a hotel across the street
afterward. Yes. Right. Yep. And it's completely snuck up on everybody.
It did, but at the same time, like, it's great to see that they've played 3 games, that they've gotten the result in again to keep this whole thing going. Because now, like, let's put it this way, it matters.
Oh yeah.
If you're like, what did you hit me with earlier in the show? There's 6 points good on a playoff spot.
6 points clear.
So guess what that means? They're going to get to Saturday and they're going to be in a playoff spot.
Yep.
So the game matters.
Can't fight with that. Can't argue
that. The game matters. And
And the Flyers are in a better playoff position than the Devils. Who would have guessed that coming into the season?
Guess what? It actually maybe matters more to the Devils because they need points.
Oh, they need points.
But so do the Flyers, and they know that.
I will also be interested to see, just kind of looking forward to the Sunday game on that same ice surface. I'm curious to see how the ice holds up. And I know there's games on it all week, and I know that,
not games. Well, there's practices all week, but
no, I mean like charity games and men's league games. They rent out the ice pretty frequently at those events. I know they did when it was in Philly.
I don't know if they do it as much before, though. That's usually an after thing.
Well, fair enough.
Let's put it this way: the rink is still being put together as we speak.
Okay,
and then there's practices as soon as Thursday, so. I don't think there's a whole lot going on with that.
They hold that for afterward. So.
Right. Okay, well then for afterwards.
Then I will be curious to see how the ice holds up in that second game, especially if it is in the middle of the afternoon. Because the second game is scheduled for a day game, is it not?
It's 3:00. Now, I will give you this because obviously I'm concerned with that because I'm going in that general area.
Yep.
Friday's a high of 41 degrees. So by the nighttime, by the way, it's dipping down to 28.
Should be totally fine.
This is fun. Now this is supposed to be early apparently, but there's potential for an inch of snow on Saturday during the day, so it wouldn't be during the game time. It's only a 40% chance, so let's not hype up too much.
It'd be fun.
And again, as we speak, like that changes. But what I was more concerned with was the high temperature on Saturday is set for 36 degrees.
Nice.
Which for an outdoor rink, you might not get more ideal than that.
That's pretty solid.
And if the weather does not present as last Stadium Series that we can remember did, rain, that really messes with the way that the ice probably holds up, you're in a much better spot. I think that this has potential to be really, really good weather conditions, temperature-wise, for the ice surface, and should deliver a quality product then.
Yeah, and a little bit of snow wouldn't hurt anybody. They could clear that out enough that.
Well, they'll take care of that. Like they'll be monitoring that throughout the course of the week. Like let's put it this way: here's something that I know is going to happen. They are getting snow earlier in the week.
Okay.
Like there's a storm that's supposed to come through. It's supposed to bring probably like not like terrible amounts, but like
a couple inches.
Especially up there, like
okay,
you're going further north, so yeah, but we'll see. And
hopefully
this time around, unlike some of the other ones that the Flyers have played in, because most people don't have great memories from the outdoor games. The scenes are great, like the scenic portion of it is great, but the results haven't typically been good other than one.
The 2019 Stadium Series is a top 5 Flyers game I've ever been to in my life.
And I got to experience that one, and I obviously will be experiencing this one too. I'm very excited to be headed up there and see what the viewpoint is like, and hopefully it's a little bit better than it was when it was in Lincoln Financial Field. I kind of was watching from the highway last time. So and not to mention the fact that as the weather hit, like good luck again. Like I would love nothing more than a clear night that just allows you to see the rink and everything like that. So,
well, I hope the game goes well, and I hope you have a good time up there. But
I'll tell you all about it the next morning.
I was gonna say, and we will be back to talk about that next week. In the meantime, follow Kevin's adventures up in North Jersey at Kevin_Durso on all the social medias. Make sure you follow him on Instagram too. We're doing a lot of good stuff over there. Make sure to follow the show everywhere too at YWT Podcast. Find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. All right, Kevin, we're out of here. We got 3 games this week. Stadium Series on Saturday. We'll be back next week to talk about it. It's playoff hunt time, baby. We're out of the All-Star break. The Flyers are winning. I'll see you.